All right, good morning, everybody, to another CUTE session, Champions Using Teams Effectively, with your host, myself, Ricardo Wilkins, Stacy Mildenberger, and possibly joining a little later, Nash Pearson as well. We are Microsoft folks here to geek out with you on Teams. Hopefully you came here today with questions. That's what this session is all about, is office hours really for your questions. But we will certainly chat it up about things as well. So if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat. Feel free to come off mute as well. That's actually, we switched to this format for those that are new. This used to be a live event, and it was very much a one-to-many, and chat only. We switched it to this format, which really makes it much more interactive. In fact, for the topics I was thinking about talking about, I'm really hoping we can be interactive today. But certainly because Teams can now support 1,000 users, we didn't really need that live event for the scale piece. I'm always worried that one day I'll show up and there'll be hundreds of people in this meeting. So that's why I had the live event initially.
Oh, we'll take that problem.
Right, it's a good problem to have. Yeah. But yeah, glad everybody could join. So yeah, we'll keep monitoring the chat. What when I come here, it's always usually something that has happened to me during the week since we last met. That's really sparks my conversation points, and so I was gonna chat a little bit, and hopefully you can chat with me about this concept that I was working with another group of getting your team to start using Teams. So kind of beyond the how do I get my org to adopt Teams, which is certainly a bunch of moving parts, and we got tons of guidance, for adoption and change management of that. I'm trying to kind of take it down to the smaller level. I'm on a team with 10 people. We have been used to, collaborating with email and whatnot. How do I get them? I love Teams. How do I get the rest of my team members to start using Teams, And so if anybody, on the line has had, gone through that, I'd love to hear, your story there too. But I was thinking about it really in terms of three things. One, how do we get people to change their email habits and maybe start chatting more? Two, the files. How do I get folks to start doing more file stuff in Teams? And then three, meetings. How do I get people to start thinking about the channel meeting, since we're all in Teams now, versus a normal Teams meeting, right? So those are the three areas that, as I thought about, some of the teams I've been on and the challenges with getting in Teams, those are the three areas that seem to be not blockers, but kind of sticking points, because there's some heavy duty habits in those three areas, right? Your email, your files, and the way you meet. Especially over the last few years, we really developed some certain habits there. And so sometimes we need to change those habits. So Stacey, I don't know if you've had an experience like that, or anybody on the line had either a good or a bad experience with getting their team into Teams. But to me, that's an interesting concept.
Well, you need a willing spirit of someone in the team to be that nudge, right? And I think that definitely the folks who are joining our call, especially our week after week repeaters, are among those that I would consider to be that willing spirit for their own teams. So yeah, those gentle nudges, those polite ways of saying, "Did you forget we have Teams now?" Because this is definitely easier for me to consume and to give you your information back if we're in Teams to start with. So. Yeah. I know that those are going to be helpful tips.
And you make a real good point. This probably should be like my fourth bullet, which is, I think you're right. You do need an evangelist or someone who's willing to, be the one to do the gentle nudges. Sometimes the one that's willing to take an email conversation and say, hey, I'm going to bring this over into Teams, and maybe even, repost the email conversation. So somebody's many times has to be willing to do a little extra work for the sake of getting the team to vibe on this whole Teams thing, right? And yeah, gentle nudges is probably what it should be called, because certainly you could take a more abrasive approach. It's like, we will use Teams, stop emailing me or something, and that doesn't go over well. was trying to see, check out the chat here.
Oh, I love that, Jim. The tap into the fear of missing out. Yes.
Yes.
That's a great one.
Yeah. So for the video folks, tap into FOMO, fear of missing out. I agree. You want to get everybody think that all the cool kids are in teams right now, and if you're not playing there, you're not cool. I like that thought.
I know that, like, even I was at Microsoft and relatively new to Microsoft when Teams first rolled out, and we struggled, right? We lived and died in email. And the two things that I kept seeing over and over again by both our boss and some of the leaders on our team is that when an email thread would get going and get hot and there's lots of replies coming, someone would be like, hey, I'm moving this conversation over to Teams. Here's the link. And they would go and post, hey, here's the summary of the conversation. And we're gonna try to have this in Teams. So we get a threaded conversation there. That was one of the best behaviors that I saw, because I wanted to be one of the folks always doing this. When it starts as email, it's hard not to continue it as email. It's going to that idea of, let's just get the easy transition. Yeah. And then similarly, anytime anyone would send an attachment to the wider group where you were supposed to do feedback or updates or something, it turned into a race of who could grab that attachment from that email, upload it to the team, and reply back saying, I've moved this into Teams so that we don't have 50 copies of that stupid PowerPoint flipping around or spreadsheet flipping around. Mm-hmm. So yeah, just things with lots of emails and things where we were going to get tons of copies of attachments. Those were the quick reply to that email thread to move it over to Teams. Mm-hmm. And when you combined it and here's our threaded conversation about that document, we can go chat about it there. Huge win for just changing behaviors for people who wanted to do it. We weren't resistant. We just we were in our old habits, and those types of behavior changes, even when it isn't working well, that the 50 trying to reconcile a 50 email thread into what the heck just happened, because dear God, you were out for an afternoon taking your kid to a doctor's appointment. Way easier to just catch up on that thread when it's in a channel conversation.
I will say you do have to be careful when you look at an email thread that I feel like they don't all necessarily are good candidates for going over in Teams, right? So certainly if there are people external to your team in the thread, that's an obvious one, right? If I'm trying to take this into Teams and I see people I don't know or that aren't in Teams or in my team, I can't do it. But even if it has a vibe like it might go beyond, your team, you may want to hold it, in email for a while. So some I think are obvious. This is my core team. This is a conversation that's not going to get any bigger than my core team. We're all already in Teams. Let's bring it over. But you do have to assess the situation, before you immediately jump into the Teams. But I always think, and what I tell customers too is, anytime I think, this conversation is going to be a series of 1 and 2 sentence responses, that's when I really want to get that thing out of Outlook, because that, we're about to have this conversation like a text message chain, and that just doesn't belong in Outlook. That is super belongs in our Teams chat area.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you want to get people out of email, but you don't want to, in my opinion, don't want to be a zealot about it, right? I mean, there is still certainly a lot of place for email, so you just have to, judge it. I saw the question, about an Outlook dashboard related to, I guess, your team's content. Is that Jim? Yeah, hub and shared space, and maybe that's the bigger question of, why isn't there a stronger relationship maybe between Outlook and Teams? Because these days, especially for many of us, those are the two apps that we have up all day long, and we started going there with the share to Outlook, share to Teams buttons. Those certainly help. I've seen people hack their way into bringing their webmail, into a tab and into Teams. But yeah, there's probably still room for some integration there, in terms of making them more of a seamless, uh, like say dashboard or something.
One of the things that you hear all the time in the productivity areas is really trying to get a handle on your inbox. And so that's kind of where I was going with that dashboard, that if there was an app in Teams that allowed you to kind of control your inbox, and then you could get to, those things that you mark as high priority or to-do items or action-oriented versus the FYI kind of thing that you can just then file away right into the team.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Well, so we talked about that share to Outlook piece. There's also the integration of tasks, right? So if you were to flag an email today, that's going to go into Planner, which is essentially like going into Teams because you've got your tasks on the left rail, right? So that's maybe one way to think about bringing things over. If you were not everybody's a big task person, but if you are, that could be another way to kind of bring that integration together. And then files is the other thing as well, right? People are collaborating, in email even today with even the prevalence of all these cloud storage and collaborative options. And to me, this is an interesting one too, because just like Nash is saying, even in our internal teams, you see a progression as people kind of start to get more comfortable with doing everything in Teams. And so I have seen maybe 5 years ago, you'd certainly have team members who were working on documents on their desktop, right? It wasn't stored in any cloud storage whatsoever, and they're trying to share it with you and sending it through email. Then people are now progressing and getting more comfortable with it being in their OneDrive, which is great. And it is now in the cloud, and it's now more collaborative, but still not, but we're still both in the same team. So why not have it in the Teams area, which we know is using SharePoint, but have it in an area where the whole team has access to it. And it's at that point that I pause, because I don't want to squash the fact that the person has at least gotten to OneDrive. I like to at least encourage that, okay, it's not on your desktop anymore. But let's take it from your My Drive to our Drive, the Teams area, the SharePoint in Teams, so that everyone has access. Because for our core team, there just shouldn't be a reason why someone puts up a document in a meeting and I don't have access to it, and we're all on the same team. Well, maybe there are some reasons, but in general, as a core team, all the documents we work on together, we should make it easy to get at them. So sometimes that's a matter of just helping people understand what it means to put their file in the team, that I don't lose access or control to it. But what I am doing is just automatically giving the rest of my team members access to it, which is probably something I want to do anyway, So, and then reminding them of the power, because I think people forget the power of real-time co-authoring and the collaboration that comes from, committing to putting your documents in the cloud. I always love, when someone puts a document in a meeting that's in the part of the team, and you can immediately click in it and you'll see the bubbles of everybody in the meeting starting to appear on that, because everybody's clicking on it and looking at it and maybe even editing it at the same time. I mean, that's the world I want to live in, right? Where I don't have to wait till after the meeting to get that document or make comments or edits. Let's do it in the moment, real time together. So again, just checking the chat from Michelle. So let's see. So the biggest problem is that event created in Outlook doesn't always copy in Teams. Love Teams, and our stakeholders have stated it's an easy platform. How to do OneNote during a meeting so everyone can enter their notes at the same time. Okay, yeah. So so that event created in Outlook doesn't always copy in the Teams. And I'm wondering if you're meaning like a channel meeting event, maybe doesn't always copy. I will say for that OneNote during a meeting, that is we've talked about OneNote a lot in this series, but that's one that really benefits from the team concept and the channel meeting, because if I can put my OneNote in the Teams shared area, I immediately know it's available to everyone. I don't have to worry about sharing it out. I really just have to give a link to someone for it. Any other scenario, I've got to share it out, make sure people have got access. But Teams really makes OneNote collaboration a lot easier in that there's a tab for it. I can fire that up. It's very visible to the rest of the team, and then and immediately shareable, or it's immediately shared in that space as well. And I can show that if we want to. But yeah, you're saying a calendar event or a meeting doesn't always copy into Teams.
I'll make it easier for you. I'll talk.
Okay.
Yeah, right. When I do a calendar event in Outlook, sometimes it goes over to the Teams calendar, but sometimes it doesn't, and I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong.
So, to be clear, there is no such thing as a Teams calendar. All of the calendaring stuff you see in Teams is actually getting read out of Exchange Online or Exchange 2016 or higher on-prem.
Okay.
So it isn't actually possible for you to create one in Outlook or in Teams and not have it show up in Outlook, because that's where it goes. There are some scenarios where you might have something in Outlook that isn't on your personal calendar, and the only calendar you see in Teams is your personal calendar. So I'm wondering if that's maybe the scenario.
I think that might be it.
Okay.
I kept looking back and forth and thinking, okay, what's the difference here? And I think that's the anomaly. I think that might be it. Thank you.
Yeah, to take that point further, yeah, to Nash's point, these channel meetings are going on the group calendar for that team, which is old school is probably a strong word, but these teams are based off of Office 365 groups, and those have group calendars. And so while this test one should certainly sync to my personal calendar and the calendars of the other folks in the team, it is kind of by definition living on the group calendar. And for a while that was pretty mysterious. In fact, the trick I would use to get to that quickly is, and this makes no sense at all, so I don't know if you should even apply this to memory, but I would go to Files just so I could easily get to the SharePoint site. And then I would go to Conversations, which you would think are Teams chats, but they're not. They're the old school Outlook or Office 365 group email conversations.
Yep. So
it's taking me here to my old school email DL, and then that's where I then go to this little button here that would take me to the. I really don't even want you to apply that to memory. That's such a weird hack, but that's how I've used to get to it. But you can see here, this has got the channel meetings for this, and it is different than my personal calendar.
All right, so if we look on the left-hand side, we see that he's got his personal calendar checked and the group calendar checked. The group calendar is in green, the personal calendar is in blue. So like the Friday the 3rd ones from his personal, everything on the Tuesdays is on the group calendar. So yeah, you wouldn't expect to see the ones on the group calendar in Teams because you haven't copied those to your personal calendar.
Right.
If you were to go through and accept them and do things like that, you would see them on your personal calendar though.
Got it. All right, well, that solves my problem. And the only other thing I wanted to know was just I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Darby went through it, and you can put the OneNote into a meeting, and I'm not doing it right. So when you have a chance, that's it. So
one more thing I'd say about the group calendar is, I was going to say that was a little bit mysterious, and we try to make it a little less mysterious by adding this channel calendar tab. So, and I guess I've already got one in this team. Must be right here. So that calendar we just tried to look at is trying to be represented by this guy. So that kind of helps with that a little bit. To your point about OneNote, and what I was saying earlier, it is made easier because of this nice tab where I can create either a new one or do something with an existing one. It becomes a tab, which is then immediately made available to everyone. But if I wanted to show that in a meeting, in fact, let me go to let's just fire up a meeting and see what we can do here. Again, if this meeting is what I call like mixed company, people who are not part of the team, sharing a OneNote notebook might be a little more complicated for them to get at. But if this is all team members, should be a little easier. Just trying to remember if I could do it right. I don't think I can do it right from chat here. So the way I would do it, I'm in a meeting, let's say with other team members, I would, where am I? Go to my team, fire up a OneNote. Let's say it's a new one for today's meeting. I'm going to save that. I've got the little link to post it to the channel so that people know that got created and it's not just a silent creation in the background. So now I've got a new meeting ready, a new notebook ready to go. And then from here, I would probably do this. Again, I'm assuming everybody in my meeting is part of this team. Copy a link to it, come to my meeting, and just pop that right into the chat. Anybody in this meeting who's also part of the team, that should open up for them just like it's opening for me. And it is now already immediately available for real-time co-authoring. Anything they type, I'd see, and vice versa. So again, for my core team, this should work really nicely. If I did want to share my screen or share the OneNote, I could do that as well. But technically, they could all just click that and be in it at the same time. So just another advantage of core team members who have a team using that. And Teams just really takes away the common problem scenarios of how do I share this? How do I get this stuff to you? We've all got access to it, and with that assumption, I can then do things like this to make it a little easier. Does that help a bit?
It does. Yeah. It does. And just knowing that I want to put them all in a group in order for that to happen makes the difference.
Right. Yeah. If you can get all the team members in this team, for instance, add the members here, then life becomes a lot easier for your team's collaboration. And then that was my third point to this conversation, is this idea of channel meetings versus regular team meetings. And just like with files, where I don't want to squash people's OneDrive usage, I don't want to squash people's, I make my meetings in Outlook, and that's great. Where at least we're in teams, having meetings, but recognizing that we might get a couple more bells and whistles by having a channel meeting, and given that this meeting is all our core people, I'm not necessarily worried about external people coming in, that channel meeting is potentially more appropriate. So, in my mind, when you have a channel meeting, Teams is saying, this is a family meeting. I know all these people, so I'm going to turn on all the things, the big one being like the files upload button, right? I think in a past session, we even talked about some of the challenges of meetings with external people and sharing files and whatnot. Those challenges go away in that channel meeting, because Teams is more than happy to make sure everybody can see, documents being put into chat, allowing people to open them and whatnot, because putting them here is essentially the same as if I came over here and uploaded them, there. We're all in the team. These are going to go into the files area, things like that. So all of the security we expect, still applies. So yeah, that channel meeting, again, I try not to push that too hard for a team that's still warming up to Teams, because especially kind of to the point you just mentioned about where do my appointments show. Sometimes these new meetings don't necessarily, I've always seen people say I didn't get it, it's not on my calendar, and sometimes you got to come in here and add it manually. That tends to be the sticking point sometimes with the channel meetings is, hey, why isn't this on my calendar? So I'm a little cautious from that perspective. But once we get past that, life can be good in terms of having a meeting where all the bells and whistles are turned on. Yeah, to Nash's point in the chat, when you do have a channel meeting, but then you do have external folks, then those folks might have an experience that they don't expect, where I can't do files, I can't do chat. And again, from my perspective, Teams is like, I know you can't. I don't know who you are. This was a family meeting that you walked into. I'm turning off a few things. I don't know you, but sometimes that's got to be told to those external folks that hey, they may experience that. In fact, I just had a group that switched to a channel meeting, and I pointed that out, that hey, this is cool, but the moment you guys maybe forward this meeting to someone outside of the team, understand we're gonna lose our upload button as soon as that external person comes in, or or the experience might be different. So it'd be great to make them a team member versus just forwarding the email, so we can keep all of the goodness of this channel meeting going. So there's a couple more moving parts to the channel meeting, which is why I don't try to push it hard initially. Try to ease people into it and make sure they're comfortable with it. But it is great when it works. I think actually all three of us have been in meetings that recurring channel meetings that have gone on for months, and you'll see hundreds, thousands of chat messages, piling up here, which is great from a historical perspective to be able to make all that be part of your channel or your search and goods and things like that. When it gets big enough, you run into some challenges, but for most folks, it's great to have all that historical knowledge in there.
So what you're describing is not an issue for a single meeting that's scheduled through a channel calendar.
The volume aspect.
Well, then, because I invited two people into a meeting that I scheduled in the channel because most of the people were in that channel, and I wanted to keep the recording of it inside of the team.
Right.
But I invited two people that were not a member of the team, so they will still be able to participate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll always let them in. What they won't get is the recording, I would suspect. And I would imagine that what you will. So right now, this is just a one-off meeting. Actually, this is a channel meeting. Yeah. You can see here I've got the paperclip there. I think you're going to lose that once those external people come in. I'm not sure. I can't remember what else you might lose.
They're not even going to see the chat panel, so they don't just lose the paperclip. They won't see chat if they're not a member of the team.
Yeah. And it may depend on what kind of person they are. If they are like completely external to the tenant, if they are like in the org but just not in the team, I think they would get chat, right?
Nope. Nope, because chat in a channel meeting is really channel conversations.
That's true. You're right.
So they're not going to see that at all.
Yeah. So yeah. So the good news is you can get anybody in that meeting you want. They will be able to get in. But bells and whistles, they'll lose a plenty of them. The biggest ones being chat or files and chat in general.
So if they were added to the team after they joined the meeting, would that resolve that issue, or does it have to go through some type of authentication process?
My guess is they'd have to rejoin the meeting. That we don't. Yeah. I'm going to guess that we don't dynamically look for membership changes every couple seconds or anything like that, but. When you join the meeting and it's like, yeah, you don't have access to the chat, it doesn't render the chat pane or the chat bubble or anything like that. It hides it. Which actually, I hate that they do that. I wish it would show the chat bubble grayed out and give you some mouse over text saying, this is a channel meeting. You're not part of the channel. Mm-hmm. That's why you can't see this, because we hear this all the time, even internal at Microsoft, when there's a big team meeting, like some community team where anybody could join. And then somebody gets forwarded the calendar invite for the stream office hours. There's always two or three people like, oh, I can't see the chat. It's like, yep, it's a channel meeting. Let me give you the link to the public team for you to go and join it, and then it'll work for you. But it's just one of those things where if you ever hear somebody say, I can't see the chat, ask, is this a channel meeting? And if the answer is yes, then ask, is this person a member of the team that's hosting it? And that answer will usually be no. Otherwise, something's broken, but usually nothing's broken. They're just not a member of the team.
Yeah. And maybe that's a good kind of closing point to this conversation of how do I get my folks in teams is making sure you're helping with education, because to that point, there's nothing wrong there. It's just people need to know how this thing works, right? And so if you're trying to encourage teams use, you don't want to give them a sour taste like, oh, this thing, I'm going through this with, again, another group I'm working with. You don't want to give a sour taste in their mouth like, oh, this thing doesn't work. It actually is working fine, but here's why it's working the way it's working, And so being the evangelist that, explains that is going to be key to keeping the momentum going for that team's usage. Awesome. I appreciate the interaction there and the questions. Hopefully that was a good convo. I know it was a good topic for me. It's timely for some conversations I'm in outside of this meeting. So good stuff. We are at time. So I know I do see chat going. Yeah, it's a shame for those that are watching on demand. You're missing a lot of lively chat. I guess you should be here on Fridays, 11 a.m. Eastern. That's all I can say. But other than that, we will see everybody next week. And again, come with your questions or come to just geek out with us on Teams. But glad to see you guys today and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ricardo. Thanks, Nash. Bye, guys.
Bye.